Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our episode 10. There it is, episode 10 of Wirecast Live. Welcome, everybody. I'm Andrew Haley, and we're glad you're joining us today. We've been doing up till now, three-part. This will be, I think, installment number 4 on Wirecast 7 and all the new features. And we just keep rolling through them, adding stuff, and talking about things that we've already addressed. This is a great place. If you joined us, we had a great webinar this morning. A bunch of people showed up, asked a lot of great questions, and learned a lot about Wirecast 7. I packed a lot into an hour-long session, really just had to run through stuff. Here's where we can spend a little more time, kick back a little bit, take questions. I can really focus it on what you guys want to see or want to learn about and interact, and we can share tips and strategies. A lot of stuff that we're all still figuring out. Wirecast 7 has really fundamentally changed the way you use and operate Wirecast in so many key ways that, as I said on the very first broadcast, we will still be figuring this out for a while. And there's going to be some adjustments and some new updates coming out to help, remediate things that may not be working, or to improve things, or take things even to another level. As with software releases in general, with software products in general that are still under development, this is an organic process. It's a living process. There's no one defined version of the software for all time. It's got to adapt and update with new technologies, new features that are coming along, and new workflows as more and more people start live streaming online, and more broadcasting type features get in there. I think, as the world changes and technology changes, the software has to change. And so as people's interests and content needs change, the software has to adapt to that. So you're seeing, really a continuum, a process, not something that says this is the way it's going to be and the way it's always going to be. Obviously, there are things that have remained the same since Wire first version, and there have been a lot of new features. So that's just all a long way of saying that this is just a process of discovery, and if you do have something you want to share with us, this is the great place to share it. So I see Bennett, thanks for joining us. You have an EasyCap USB capture card. Great example. That's a capture card that has been out for a while, EasyCap, and sometimes they've worked with some versions of Wirecast and other times not. So share if you're finding that's useful for you. It's not one that I've tried recently. Last time I tried it was a couple of years ago, and I was having some problems, I think, on with one version of Wirecast and some operating system versus an earlier one. So I've heard some customers use them really well, and other customers had problems. If you are having problems with that particular capture card, then I recommend you head over to our website and check out the list. There we have some really up-to-date capture cards, and that list will actually go through some changes as well, as we add and update more devices onto there. So you can find that out at the, let's see, I think the features page. If you click on features, you'll see capture, and you can see a full list of supported features right here. So click on the full supported capture device list. That'll take you to this URL up here, and I can post that, hold on. I can post that in the comments section for you. So I'm just gonna post that for you. And you can head over to there and find a list of ones that we actually have had time to test and ones that we know about, starting with webcams and going on through capture cards. So you'll find a great list there. Ones that I'm currently using on this computer, actually, I'm using the Magewell XI USB 100, USB 3 for this card, and I really like that one. It doesn't require any software installation. It just works with the native Mac or Windows drivers. I think it also works on Linux. So great, but Wirecast doesn't work on Linux, so that's kind of neither here nor there. Anyway, head there if you need to, Bennett. Thanks for sharing that. Hugo, good to see you. Alan, thanks for commenting. So if you have questions there, I can take those real fast. And then I'd like to dive into the topic for today. And what we're going to talk about are, we're going to focus on audio mixing, the ISO recording feature, which I haven't really had time to demonstrate on here, and the talk about AV sync. And we'll also try to talk about mix minus and audio monitoring, because that's all tied into the audio stuff. And I'd also like to talk a little bit more about text and titles, because I feel like I was actually, I have a correction to make. I have an error that I'd like to correct for the record. So let me maybe we'll start with that and then go on to the other stuff. Hugo, huge improvements from version 3. I agree with that. There's been a lot of improvements since Wirecast 3. I started on 4. I think I saw 3, but I never used it. I just saw it in action. Someone demoed it for me. Hugo, Wirecast is your main source of income. That's great. And you're participating in the betas. That's great. Yeah, so you've been around. You've seen how it's evolved. And yeah, I mean, it just gets better and better, doesn't it? Right. And, but of course, there's also changes, things that you may have really loved, may have gone by the wayside just for reasons that we couldn't keep it in there. Yeah, I can show, David, I'll show you how delays work in that source. So we'll cover that in AV sync and delays and stuff. Okay, so why don't we dive in? I'll come back and check on your questions in a little bit, and then we'll talk, we'll talk as we go with each feature. So the first thing I want to do is I have a bit of a confession to make. I think I was labeling under a misapprehension on how titles versus text worked. So I think I've, up till today, probably described it like this. Titles are titles and text is text, and they're different. So when you, in 7 anyway, so let's look at that real fast. It turns out they're not totally different. They have a little bit of differences, but we'll talk about that. So when you click on the sources list, you'll see 2 options here. You see the text and you see titles. And up to this point, I wanted to really talk about how they're very different. And the titles are the traditional titles that you're used to in Wirecast, and the text is kind of this new live dynamic thing. Well, it turns out that wasn't totally the case. Titles actually are more of a hybrid. They still have the old like layouts, templates, and styles that you're used to from our title library. So if we click on that, you'll see the familiar built-in title library with all the different styles and some very cool stuff that you can use. And that's been there for since at least I think Wirecast 4. So if we click on our Ocean title template, which is always my favorite because it's right up there, and I think I'm a fan of the color blue and the layout here. I tend to gravitate towards those. You'll see that this is it's the same old familiar thing. Now, where it gets interesting is when you actually want to change the title fields or change the text in the screen. At that point, you're actually selecting a text box, which is the same as if we created one using this text feature. If we added a new text box, the first thing Wirecast would ask us is, do you want to make this an additional? You'll notice that the first thing that pops up is the 3 text boxes that were associated with that title field. So these are in fact the same text boxes. So we can actually, by adding an existing text field, if say we wanted to add Ocean title, say 1, then we add it to here. You'll notice it has the exact same size and position and all the same style properties and everything of the same one that's appearing in our titles right here. So even though we've added a new text source, what we've actually done is we've just made a new shot that has the exact same title on it. And in fact, it has the same content. So if I change one, I'm actually going to change it in both. Wirecast has never worked that way before. The way we've switched over to an entirely new way of doing text, which is widget-based or text box-based, and it's actually a global system. So a text box exists as a global source. You could almost consider it like a camera. And if you had a camera A pointed at a person, then you use that same camera A in a different shot, even though they're in a different position or maybe they're smaller, the person on screen hasn't changed. It's the same camera angle, the same content is inside the shot. All you've done is changed the position or you've thrown on a filter, but the actual video content itself inside that camera hasn't changed. In order to do that, you'd have to make a new camera. So you have to start considering in Wirecast 7, text boxes are like cameras, global cameras, and they're almost like shots of the text itself. And let me give you a real example of that. This is the best way I can describe it. It's better just to show you. So if I open my editor here, and I have two shots here, I have one in live and one in preview. Now they have the different positions, so one is higher up the screen, more in the middle, and one is on this ocean title down at the bottom. But they are in fact the exact same shot or content. So if we go down and we change title to my name, oh, I'm on the wrong one, haha. Let's change this, undo that. We change the middle one there, which is ocean title text 1, and we change that to Andrew Haley, you'll see it's actually updating in both of our shots. It's because both shots use the same source, the same text camera. And so you can certainly move things around, and that's not going to change between, just like you can do with other shots. So it's totally fine to have the same camera in different spots around the screen, or even make it smaller or larger in a different screen. So if we want to make this one super small, or even rotate it, right? We could rotate it and flip it upside down, and maybe we'll make it super big. You can kind of have this disappearing into the background type perspective. It's really still the same text. And so if the content of that changes at all, you're changing it in both. Right? So then it's changed in both. Keep in mind also that there's no preview changes. So before, changing text was not live. It wasn't a live feature. So I could have this shot, the same text, in both the live window and the preview window, and I could change it in the shot editor. So I could go in and I could, again, just make sure I've got the right one selected here. I used to be able to change all the styles. I could make it large, and I could change the color of it. I could do all kinds of crazy stuff to it, and the live window would not be affected. Over here, the text would remain the same until I took those changes live. Now that's not the case. If a text is in the live window, you make any changes to the content, then it's going to, in this source properties tab here, it's going to update in the live window. So as you can see, changing it back to Andrew Haley changes it in both the preview and the live window. That's why we call this a live text box, or a live text tool. If you want to make substantive stylistic changes or content changes, so again, if we say make the text yellow, then you don't want your audience to see you making those changes, you've got to take it off of the live window in order for them not to see that. So, take it out of the live window, then bring it into the preview window, make your changes. So if we want to go back to white, for example, back to white, and I'm going to hit enter. And wait, see, even I'm getting thrown off here. So if we go back to white, I'm going to click on this guy. We're going to go over to the white tab there, and we're going to click out of the box. And now it's white, and that change has been made. Does that make sense? So I really needed to clear that up because I was operating under a misunderstanding of how this tool really worked. So for what it's worth, that's how it is. Now, changes to the, because titles actually include other layers like this background overlay, which is really just a Photoshop kind of image or a graphically designed image for the titles or the text to sit on top of. This, again, is really just like moving a picture or stuff around. You'll notice it doesn't change. It only applies to the text boxes. Make sense? And that is also true with scale and position, because I can't actually change the color of this or do any of that live. There's no tools for that. It is always blue. It's always the same content. So all I can really do is change the position and the scale of it, and I can do that without affecting the live shot. But that's also true of the text. So if I come and change the position of that, that's not going to affect the live window. It's only the text properties i.e. the text or font size, the font text color. I mean, all of this down here, anything that you change in this tab here is all live. And there's even a warning at the bottom that you need to take very seriously. Changes to these settings will affect all shots containing this device, and then we should add in real time, no matter the shot. So even live is no longer a sacred space as it was in 6. It is actually can be changed or operated or affected by the settings in this tab. And that is true for cameras. That was true for live scoreboards. All the source settings in the source settings window in 6 and below, anything you changed in there was going to affect actual shots, because you're actually now messing with the underlying content or source that Wirecast is using for all of those shots. And those sources and those settings are global and will instantly affect any shot that's happening. And that's why I think you have to be careful, because this tab, this dynamic editor up here, has local properties, which will only affect the local instance, which really come down to scale, translation, a position, rotation, and so forth. Properties like that you see here, mats and so forth. They also affect volume and things like that, chroma key, and even transition settings. But this is really a hybrid of more the source settings, more of the global settings. So keep that in mind. It's called the text properties, but if you add a camera, it's just basically the object properties or the source properties tab. And so be aware of that. Is that helpful? Hope that clears things up, because even I was thrown off by that, and I needed to correct that for the record. Okay, so a couple comments. Will this be saved on the Wirecast or Telestream website so you can watch it further? Yes, we save it actually on the Facebook videos section. We also have Wirecast Tube, where we do get these up. We don't get them up right away. We're still working on turning that around a little faster, but there's some issues with the how quick we can get that turned around, but we are working those out. So if you head over to youtube.com, let me just actually make this. Okay, so if we go to, so if you search for Wirecast Tube, you'll find it right here. And you can find our YouTube channel where we post all of these episodes. We are also working on getting a section of our website that will have all of these, but there is at the moment no section where this stuff is posted. I guess we could post it in the resources section. This just, for now, we post everything to the YouTube channel and to the Facebook channel. So you can find our past episodes there. And episode 9 from last week is there. And this is episode 10, so it should be up there shortly. I'll even send you a link to the channel there as well. Okay, so next up we've got Anderson. You're saying in 6 you usually duplicate a shot, then edit the text field, but in 7 you have to edit and all of them changes and no way to edit them independently. At this time, that is correct. There's no way to independently edit a duplicate shot. And I know exactly that workflow. So if you have to, you have the same title and you want to, but you have 2 different people on 2 speakers. And so you have, Andrew and say Bob. I'm going to grab this, and this. And I'm messing all that up. Hold on. Let's try this again. Grab all of them. And so if you have the 2, titles here and you want to use the same settings and style, and you hit the duplicate option down here, then if you normally in Wirecast 6, you would go in and you'd start editing the content, right? You'd start changing it. But because this duplicate you're now in this tab, and this tab is a global settings tab. So you're actually editing the same box. So your best bet to duplicate the same content and style for now is to create just add a new title, and then go find the exact same title. And then you'll see the content's now different from what we had before. It's same, style and everything, but these are all new text boxes that have been created. So now if you edit it to say Bob, you're not going to affect your previous shot. Now there's some problems with that, because if you tweaked any of these settings, then you can't really, you'll have to just tweak them again. You can't copy and paste those settings. I guess you could copy and paste some of these things, like I don't know if you can select Arial. Looks like not. You'd need to change it that way and use the font tab here, and just make sure you set it identically between all those. All right. Consequently, the other thing about the source settings tab kind of disappearing is there's no place where you go to check all of your you can't delete sources, I should say. You can do this here in the Media Asset Manager. You can delete them here, but if shots are still, you may have a ton of media up here that you didn't know is still connected to the document. That's kind of always been the case, but you won't see that reflected in other places. So be aware that if you say delete a shot with, if you delete that, okay, there's no shot with any of the text titles or text boxes that had those sources in them. And you really don't have a way to, it's hard to just add it back in the way it was. You can say, if we want to get that Bob title back, and you deleted all the shots with Bob, now you can see that it's still connected up here in your asset manager. Unfortunately, different titles all have the same subname or source name, so you have to you should name these. If you're very, one of these is Bob. I'm going to guess it's probably that one or that one, but we won't know for sure. So I think we should be able to add Bob back in if we go and add a text box again. And this time, if we choose an existing one that's already connected, and we choose Ocean Title Text 1, that's not that one. There it is. You can see it. That's the right one. And that'll pull it from the sort of background underneath the program. So this is where you've seen on your sources list, all of those sources list, and you go, oh, my live title scoreboard or whatever is there. My desktop presenter is there. I have like 3 desktop presenters. Why do I have 3 desktop presenters? I'm only using 1. So you would delete those because you didn't need them. Now, if you want to just quickly see what the source is, you need to add the same source again and then just select an existing one. And now that'll bring it back in. But it won't have any of those associated additional files, so you'd need to bring those in as well. And you can add those back in right here. Again, going to text and adding in the subsequent ones if you change those as well. So you've got 2 and 2 and so forth. Hope that makes sense. That's kind of how media asset management is in Wirecast 7. It's a little different. The source settings window's gone, which I'm actually glad. I didn't like the source settings window much, but it also makes everything, all that management, very contextual. So don't delete shots that you might want, I guess is the rule of thumb there. And Wirecast will actually warn you. It'll say, so if you delete this Bob asset and there's no shots anywhere in the project that are using that anymore, and then you save it, it's going to warn you. Let's see, if we go D, my document, save, it's going to tell you which shots are currently gone. And then if you save the document without them, these are going to disappear forever. And you'll need to recreate them from scratch. Now, I actually want this Wirecast cam because I'm going to use that in our AV demo. So I'm going to hit no, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to add the Wirecast cam shot. And now you'll see I can choose from an existing one or choose a new one. And I want to use my existing one, which is still connected. So there it is. I'm going to add that in, and I've got it back. Now I can save without worrying about the Bob stuff disappearing. So I'm going to hit yes. All right. So a little bit different on the source settings and the media management. There's some ramifications of the way that's worked. Very complicated, no? Yeah, I mean, I think there's things that are a lot simpler, but there are things that, because of trying to take Wirecast 6 and before, everything had its own window, and that gets to be a problem too. You don't want 50 million windows to do 50 different things. So consolidating complex things is always tricky because you might lose functionality. And the argument can be made that the source settings tab was extremely useful, or it could be made that it was kind of, I actually thought there was a lot of things you were doing in the source settings that should have been in the shot editor. And so now we've kind of brought all that together, but there are some ways that maybe we will need to change and adjust to keep the good parts, but maybe simplify the more complex parts or things that aren't as clear. So it goes right back to that. It's an organic, this is in process. Good software is never done. All right. Let's delete these other shots because I actually don't need them either. And we're going to go back to our... I'm going to actually... so this is cool. I'm not sure if I mentioned this on a previous broadcast or not, but I actually really like this feature. So this is my Wirecast cam shot. It's on my little iPhone here on my desk. And what you'll notice is, in order to keep the frame rate high, and I just didn't want to mess with trying to get a full 1920 and 1080, or it might drop too many frames, I set the settings on my camera to only stream at, I think, 960 by 540, so about half of a 1920 by 1080 stream. When Wirecast brings it in, it is actually it's smaller than the canvas. So what it's telling me is that this source is not full size to my canvas size. So if I want to change the canvas size to match, then I can do that. I can do a custom 960 by 540. So we could do that, 960 by 540. And then this scale will scale to fit, or if we just go to 100, so we can see that example, it'll pop in and it'll fill the full screen. But if my canvas size is higher than that, and typically I like to stream at 1280 by 720, but you could do a 1920, whatever. We're going to do 1280 by 720 for this. So I've set the canvas size to that size, which is fine, but now you'll notice the scale is at 133%. It's scaled to fit it because that's where it was before. But when you're bringing in, if you go back to 100%, sources are always brought in at 100%, unless they are larger than the canvas, in which case they will scale to fit down. So Wirecast will recognize sources that are too small, and they'll show you by bringing them in at their full size, 100%, and show you that if you want this to fit the full screen, you either need to lower your canvas size to match, or you're going to need to blow up your source size to fit, right? And in which case you'd be losing some quality because you're scaling up, you're blowing up the resolution. Now, it's not a problem to scale to fit sources that are larger. So if we have a 1280 or a 1920 canvas, then we would, and we brought in, say, a 4K source or a 2K source, scaling to fit that down, you don't really lose quality. You're not duplicating pixels. You're actually eliminating, and you should, it should scale down just fine and look good. But scaling up is always a problem. So Wirecast isn't going to automatically scale to fit sources that are smaller. And that's just a little way of telling you that you may lose quality if you don't lower your canvas size. And if you really still want to scale to fit, you can. You just hit this button and it'll do it. It'll jump it up. So I like that feature a lot. It's a little cool feature that it's a nice little touch. Okay, let's I see that you have, yeah, Anderson, good, yeah. Thanks for the comments. Yeah, it's definitely, it's doing great. I really like 7 as well. Larry, you were at the earlier webinar. Thanks for joining us there. Covered a lot of stuff. So let's talk about, so you got to see my correction here, because I think I was a little thrown off by the titles and text in that webinar, because up till today, I really hit home. I was like, why is it changing in the live and the preview windows at the same time? That's never happened before. So the live window is, live text really means live text, and all text boxes are live, including text boxes on titles. So our next topic today I think we should cover is our audio mixer and audio and video delay and so forth. So let's dive into that a little bit. So first thing is you have this audio mixer window. This is available in Studio and Pro. Prior to this, it was called the Audio Inspector, and the Audio Inspector was only available in Wirecast Pro. It also had your audio delay functions. So this is where you would create that. And you also could add sources that were live and make them live in the, here. Now, this is the first redesign of the Audio Inspector and is now the Audio Mixer. And just on a very simple tour here, you can see we've got the sources that are in the preview and sources that are in the canvas. So if right now we just have my preview audio, which is coming from the Wirecast cam shot, because I've got audio coming in through that. So let's take that live and see how that affects I'm actually going to minimize this. And you can see now, what is live. So you've got this live. Now the Wirecast cam source is in the live window, and it's letting you know that it's live. If we disappear that and go back to take it out of live and put it back in the preview, it's jumped out of the live area. So just keep in mind, it's dynamically going to update with that. Once it's in the live section, you've got some more controls over just the preview and audio live output here. These sliders are the exact copies of the sliders in the larger UI. So if you're going to affect this slider, then it's also going to affect the slider in the live window. So actually a better way to show you that would be this. So if you can see those sliders perfectly match each other. So they're the same slider. And so this sets the overall volume of your broadcast and what your audience hears right now. So messing with the slider affects the volume of your broadcast while you're broadcasting, very much like the live text. So be aware of that. The volume over here only affects the preview audio. So if we lower that and we say take our audio down to nothing, my audience can still hear the Wirecast cam audio until I take that change live, at which point I've said this is where I want the volume to be once I make this change, and the live output's going to drop down too. Okay, so nothing wrong with that, but that's just how that works, and I want you to be aware of that. So we're going to bring those both back up. Quite similarly, we could, of course bring this live, the preview up again, and bring it back and push that change live, and now the other slider is going to jump up. Hope that makes sense. You also, of course, have monitor headphones similar to the monitors here. So if we turn on the preview and you had your headphones in, you could hear the audio of preview, or you can switch over and hear the monitor and monitor what's going out live. Same with these buttons here, switches those in the background. So if I press this button here, it's going to affect the button right under the meter over there. So the perfect copy of those buttons are also identical. So it's just a handy way to be able to have access to your audio controls in either window. Same thing with this button, is a pure match to this one here. This is your live output mute button, and it will instantly kill. It's like dragging this slider down to 0. It's the same thing. So touching that button or not is going to control the audio on the broadcast. So you can cut all audio if, I don't know, your your landlord comes in and starts yelling at you or something like that. You have unexpected interruptions into your broadcast. All right. So next thing I should talk about is this little handy thing. Now, this is a very subtle change, but a huge one, and I really, really like it. This is your playout device. Where does your Wirecast audio play out to? Before this, your audio, it always played to the system output. So if you are a Mac user, then you would have to go to your system preferences, and I'd have to explain this to customers and Wirecast users over and over again. I'd tell them, they go, why I want my Wirecast audio to play out on my HDMI projector, or I want it to go out my HDMI to a recorder. And so now I would tell, well, it's only going to play out through the system output. So if your system output is your headphones, it's going to play out through your headphones. If your system output is if you want to play out through the HDMI, then you have to go into the system preferences and play your output through the HDMI. Now it's completely independent. So I can play my system audio out through HDMI, and I can play my Wirecast output through my headphones. So that is really neat. I no longer need to rely on this setting. I can make them completely separate. So every other audio, like if I have a mail alert or I have a YouTube video playing on the background, then that can all go to one place, and my Wirecast audio can go to a different place. So really, really cool. And any of the audio devices that are plugged into the computer that the system recognizes as a viable output will show up on this list, including things like this microphone, which is just a USB audio device, but I don't believe it has a speaker in it. No, I'm wrong on that. It actually does. It's got a headphones port on the bottom. So this is legitimately an output playout device, which is really counterintuitive, but you can actually plug this USB into the computer and then plug your headphones right in there and hear your Wirecast audio out through this, which is really what you want to do, because what that allows you to do is something really neat. So you can click the stereo Yeti, and then let me grab my headphones here, and I'm going to plug these in to the bottom here. And I'm going to turn the volume up. And if I'm doing this right, I will hear the audio. You're not going to hear this, but I'll just confirm it. Yeah, I can now hear the Wirecast audio. Anything that I'm saying through my Wirecast Cam app that's showing up here is now coming into my ears, but out of a USB device. Now, why is that useful? Well, let's look at this. So there's this other controller that allows you, for any particular source in the settings for it, the audio settings. Let's see, where is it? Here. Sorry, it's in the object properties, the properties tab. So this is a global setting. So you should be aware of that. And this is the settings where you would set the latency. It's where you configure if it's the IP address, all the things specific to that. But right at the bottom, if the device has audio, if it's a camera with audio, or if it's just a microphone plugged in, you will have this option here to monitor it. And you can choose whether you want this device to appear in the monitored output. And so if I uncheck this, then I can no longer hear my own voice coming through the output. And even though my audience will still hear it, you can see the audio is still popping up and going down. And then even on the live output, the audience is still hearing it. I'm just not hearing it on my monitors. And that's because it's not currently being monitored. If I check it back on, it jumps back in. You can also choose which channel you want it to go to. So that's very, very cool. And then, even better, a lot of people like to play audio from their computer. The example I use is, say, you want to play, let's say you want to play what would be a good example? desktop presenter, right? You want to capture some audio from your computer. Let's say you're showing people how to use some software that has audio involved in it. In this case, let's try GarageBand. So I think I have GarageBand on here. I'm going to pull up GarageBand. And let's say I'm a musician and I want to give people a tour of how to record audio or how to create a brand new project. Use GarageBand to create music. And if we add this, I'm going to hit create. If we have some sort of loop or something that we want to bring in, like we have a media library or something like that, there are, I believe, some built-in tracks here. There are sometimes. This, as I said, is a demo machine, so it's a bit, we can use this art of flight video. So if I pull that in, and I'm going to close that window, there's all this audio associated with this media clip. So I'm showing people how to edit or record, and I'm playing back the music. And you may be able to hear it. It's coming through my system headphones, my speakers right here on the desk. Now, if you want that audio to be heard by your audience, you'd either have to take your system headphones out of your computer and plug them back into a camera or a capture card, and then it could go into Wirecast, and then it could go into your stream. The other way you could do it was you could use our local audio capture, and you could turn on Desktop Presenter and capture audio with Desktop Presenter. So we could come in here and use the Wirecast, screen capture tool. It's now called Screen Capture. And so you hit OK. Now, I actually have to install the Telestream audio driver, and I think that has to be restarted, so I'm probably not going to do that in this case. But let's just go pretend that we can capture audio. So you would normally be able to check the capture system audio here, and once you've installed the driver, and then anything that you play back on the computer will be captured into Wirecast, right? So that's pretty cool. When you have the screen capture, and let's say you're showing, I'm going to actually go configure this. Let's point it at GarageBand. So I'm going to do a window capture, and we're going to select the window here. We're going to choose GarageBand, Untitled Tracks. So now when I jump into GarageBand and I play this back, and I'm just going to do this over here so you can see on the screen here. If I hit the play button, this audio would get captured into Wirecast and would play back, and you'd see this audio jumping back and down. The problem is that when you had the monitors on, Wirecast would be playing out through the system, and so would this be playing out through the system, and Wirecast's Desktop Presenter would capture its own audio, and you'd get this loop where you couldn't actually play back system audio. Now with this cool audio routing feature, that's no longer a problem. I can hear the audio just fine. I can play it back. I can even capture it, and I've got no problems with hearing it on the monitors because I can still hear that audio coming out through here through Wirecast, and I can monitor the audio going out. Now, if you don't want to hear the audio twice, then you should turn off the monitor, and so that way you can just listen to the system, listen to it here, and now you're not going to hear it showing up in the monitor, which is great. You've now mix-minused it, and that's a pretty cool feature. So by being able to select a different playout for your Wirecast audio, being able to choose which audio is monitored here in the settings for audio sources and video and audio sources, then you no longer have feedback loop problems, and you can still hear the audio from any program, whether it's the Wirecast mix or whether it's the audio itself from a program that's being generated or uses audio on your computer. Does that make sense? Really big, cool new feature. So let me pull up my Chrome window here. Just make sure you're getting that. So, Miles, you're asking, is there an easy button or a simple set of controls for a person who wants to upgrade the quality of their Facebook Live or do a pre-record show? Basically, a simplified set of controls showing your screen or video on your computer. Well, let's see. The short answer is no. There's no simple basic user interface. The closest equivalent that we have to that is what I would call Wirecast Play, which is currently still on version 6 and is available just for YouTube. So you can't stream to Facebook with it, but it's a very simplified setup. It does kind of what you're asking, just a basic screen capture, and I think it lets you add one camera and has some limitations to it. So if you look for Wirecast Play, you can also go to I think you can search for it on Google. That would be the best, but you can only stream to Facebook, to YouTube with that, not Facebook. The other answer is that if you want to pre-record everything in like a screen capture tool, if you're on Mac like ScreenFlow, we make that, or wherever you want to do. If you just pre-edit your videos, then really all you need to do in Wirecast is add one shot to the very top here. You can just add your media file, and let's say it's a movie file, or as we had the Art of Flight here, you could add that in. And when you're ready, you just hit your stream button. You can go to Facebook. And if you've watched the video, everything's the way you want it. Hit OK, configure your Facebook output, and create your event and so forth. And then once you're ready, just hit the stream button and take that live. And then your video will just play and stream straight to Facebook. So that's probably the simplest way if you just want to use a pre-recorded source. I hope that answers your question. Other than that, though, all these tools are here for you. You don't have to use them all, and it's pretty straightforward once you get the hang of it. But there is a learning curve. I'm not going to deny that. But once you kind of wrap your brain around it, I've taught this same workflow to 5th graders and 4th graders, and they get the basics really quickly. The click and switch is very easy to click and switch between sources. They get the idea that there's preview and there's live. So, one changes to one, make changes to another. All right. So, Bennett, you're wanting me to explain a little bit more about selecting audio input that you're going to use for streaming. So let me lower this audio here. So my speakers are rumbling. Maybe your capture card is an audio input or a system, which we'd select for best results. So it's really up to you what audio source you want to use for your broadcasts. Anything with audio will be detected. So you could even, of course, use a pre-recorded MP3 or something in the background. And that could be, you could take, say, this Art of Flight video. If you really, had rights and had permission to use the music and so forth, you could play that in the background underneath everything. You just lower the volume of that in the settings for it. So you can go up here and you can change the volume and just keep it at a low volume. And then, you could lower the opacity as well, which would be the same as just turning on or off the eyeball here. So if we keep the audio on for this clip but turn off the video, now we can play the audio from that. And if we take it live, you'll see it's just slowly playing that music kind of quietly in the background. And then if I take a camera like this guy live, then that would also let's see, why is that didn't automatically show up here. Let's try this again. I'm going to check the properties here, make sure everything's still working, and maybe we need to just reconnect it. Let's stop the broadcast on my Wirecast cam, and I'm going to start that up again. and see if we get that. Oh, it looks like the IP address changed. So let's do that. And that should work pretty well. Let's try this. Let's try deleting the shot. That's still working just fine. This guy we can delete. And then we'll go, and this is a troubleshooting thing, so I can actually see if I can troubleshoot this real fast. So I'm going to add the Wirecast cam shot again. I'm going to go and we'll just make a new one. And I'm going to reconnect it to the IP address. So in case you didn't know how to do that, I've got in the settings tab, first of all, you need to be streaming. So you hit the red record button, which is really just the stream button. There's also a settings tab. I'm just going to click that. And at the bottom, if you scroll to the bottom of settings, you'll see the IP address for the Wirecast Cam app. So we're going to add that in. 0.6.138. We're going to hit connect. And all right, we're back. So I'm going to put that right there again. Hit OK. And now we can add it right in, and we can jump it up to scale to fit. It's going to do that. And now let's look at, so now if we take that live as well, in addition to the Art of Flight video, we have the two coming in. And, you know, if you listen to the mix, they should both, I can hear both my audio and the music in the background. And I've lowered the audio. So that's an easy way to bring in a source and play that. So it's pretty sweet. Sriracha hot chili sauce. You're digging it. We're getting some great videos in here. Great pictures here. All right. So we've got... so I hope that kind of answers your question. Then as far as adding other types of sources for audio, if you have, say, a USB audio device plugged into your computer, that's really a system audio device. You could choose it from the capture device and add that as a system audio as a device here. So for example, I've got this microphone, the USB Yeti that's plugged in, and that could be a device here. I could add that in. And that could be on a lower layer, just quietly under, that could be the main audio. Another way to do it is if you have more than one type of camera. So I've got a couple cameras here. I'm going to add, let's add a few more devices. So we're going to really ratchet this up. Let's add the Logitech video camera, which is just a webcam. That's coming in really tiny. Let's up the resolution of that. I think we have... I think it can go up to 1920 by 1080. And maybe we'll do, and then we'll just fit to screen here. Okay, so there's my Logitech video camera, which should be right there. It's got some delay on it, so that's probably due to the fact that it's coming in as a native RGB. If we switch the resolution of that to something like this, to a YUV, we could go up to something like, we'll do 960 by 720. Let's do that. And that's going to make it square, which is okay. The frame rate's 15 frames a second. Well, whatever. Okay, so I've got this camera coming in, and it's got a slower frame rate, but that's okay. We can work with it. And then we're going to scale it up here. So I can just change the scale. So we're full screen on both. And then you see there's color matching between the two. Like the green screen in my Wirecast cam is very different from the green in the webcam. So that is something we can address by color correcting. So you can actually change the hue and the gamma and saturation and so forth. So if I want to try to make it more green to match, I can kind of take the hue down more to a yellowy range. I don't want to change my skin tone too much, but we can also up the saturation a little bit. And maybe up the brightness a little bit. Too much. I'm just kind of red. So you play around with this a little bit, you can get a closer match. Might be best to actually play with this guy a little bit, because rather than try to take a pretty normal range of colors and take this way more bright one. So saturation's really high on this. I'd probably lower that off just a little bit, and that will bring me to a closer green to the down. So you might meet them in the middle a little bit. There's no color specific correction, so it's an overall color correction. You're not going to be able to do a live, just on one color on the screen if that's off. But through these controls, you should be able to get a much closer match than you've been able to before on different types of sources. And then finally, let's bring in a third one. We're going to bring in our HDMI capture card here, which is the Magewell XI USB 100. So really going to put this computer through its paces. I'm also, just for the sake of maybe saving some resources, I'm going to turn off the live icons under performance. Oh, they're already off, so we're good. All right, and I'm going to bring that guy up to, I don't know why video delay is up to 5. We're going to take that to 0. And then we're going to take this guy down to 1920 by 1080 and resize scale to fit. Okay, so here we go. Everything should be in here now. We have 3 cameras. We've got this guy coming in through this camera. We have our webcam, and we've got, which is looking super green, so we might reset that. And anyway, just leave it for now. And then we've got our Wirecast cam. So if I take the this camera right here, and for this demonstration, Deborah Lee, can you take me off the screen so people aren't? There you go. All right. So let's talk about source sync and audio sync and video sync. So we're going to talk first with we're going to take the main camera, and I'm going to take that live. Okay, so this is the main camera. This is coming in through a USB capture card. It's HDMI. If I wave my hand, it's pretty straightforward. Now, what happens if I bring in let's start with the Wirecast cam. I'm going to bring that into delay. So you can see that there's already a delay between the two. So if I say start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, you can see it's a little behind. It's just half a second or so, right? So we probably, and that's because this Wirecast cam, and I'll bring that up here, this is, it's coming through the iPhone, it's getting compressed, streamed over the Wi-Fi network to my computer on my desktop, and it is getting decompressed and played back and into the camera. And it's pretty low latency. Honestly, I'm impressed with the latency. It's not too slow. But it is just a hair behind the camera right here, which is coming in directly through a wired method. So we need to delay the Wirecast cam. We'll start with, say, half a second. So click on the Wirecast cam properties, or the properties tab for that source, and you're going to go and add a half a second delay. And, oh, sorry, I should zoom in. Thanks for reminding me. So we're going to add a half a second delay to this, and we're also probably going to add a half a second to the audio. Let's see how that goes. It's even going to give us an update of how much memory it's going to take on the computer to do that. So half a second, and let's see how much that improves the sync. So we should click out here, and then we're good. Let's hit return, and if we click on another tab or so, we should have the delay here. And if I hold the cameras up to each other, so we can kind of see here, let me do it on this side. And we do a count here. we're still a little behind. All right. And let's go back here. So you just need to dial it in. 1, 2, 3. So we're still behind. So we need to maybe up that delay to, you know what I did? Here's what was silly. I actually increased the delay because I added it to the wrong camera. All right, what I need to do, actually, I can't speed up the Wirecast cam. That's the one that's too slow. I need to slow down the other camera. My bad. That's what was going on. So I was like, it got worse. I'm not thinking clearly here. So we've got 5. All right, here we go. This is going to work, right, guys? Let's see how we're doing now. In fact, that looks like it was a little too much because this looks like it's now a little faster. The Wirecast cam's a little fast, so we need to dial it down. Let's try 300. 0.3 seconds. Now that's better. That's a lot better. I'd say that even was probably a little too much. Let's go 2. That was almost perfect. So about 0.2 seconds was the delay, and I'm pretty happy with that. 200 milliseconds. Very good. You could dial it in a little further if you want. You could do 0.25 and mess with it. But you can also try claps, see how those go for audio delay and so forth. I have no audio coming in on this main camera here. I need to add that as a source separately. And then you do the same thing with audio. You just delay the one that is coming in ahead of the other one and try to make them match up. Alrighty, I think that covers text and titles, audio mixer, mix minus, audio playout selection device. We've even covered Wirecast cam, and we've covered how to delay audio and video. So the final topic that I wanted to cover today, I'm just going to take all this out, and Deborah, you can pop me back on screen if you like. The final topic I want to cover is ISO recording and replay, because people have asked about that. So let's look at the ISO recording. If we go up here and we just hit the configure, right? So this is the menu we're looking at. We're looking at a start all camera preview. So we can look at that real fast if you want. This is just a nice way to see what cameras you have attached to so we can get a kind of keep this on a separate monitor or a second window. You could put it on another display and keep an eye on things. That's a nice way. You don't necessarily have to turn on live icons to do this. So it's a way to have live icons off, but monitor the cameras you want to monitor. So if you add that in, the Wirecast cam, and you add in, say, the main, main camera shot, you can see those. Wirecast cam doesn't look like it's working there. Maybe that's because it's coming in as an IP stream. So either I need to troubleshoot that, or that's a bug and we need to fix. But either way, it looks like that's not a good one to monitor. We're also going to add in the Logitech cameras. So the ones that are hardwired look like they're doing fine, and no big deal there. Okay. Now, the nice thing about this is you can zoom them up to be as large as you like, and you can keep a real time. You can even slide the frame rate. This is in previous versions of Wirecast, I think 5 and 6 as well. It's just now it's located under this menu. It used to be located, I think, under the window menu before this. So that's one option for you there. But we're going to also take the final option here, which is the configure window. So we're going to configure a ISO replay. Actually, just an ISO, isolated recording. And I can choose any of my 3 cameras. I think I can't choose the Wirecast cam shot. So that's only cameras that are connected physically to the computer. So you'll see from when I click the Add ISO button down here at the bottom, it pops up a new untitled ISO, which I can check or uncheck depending on whether I want it to be activated or not. And then it's going to give me a source list of what cameras I want to record. So I really have the two options. So if I choose the main camera and I title it main camera, and I can choose what audio source I want to replay with that, or if I don't want any. Usually I would assume you'd want audio to be recorded with it. If I want the same audio, like the audio coming from the camera to be recorded, I can actually add that. Should have audio coming in, I think. We'll have to check on that. Let's add the XI100 HDMI audio. And now I've got that in the project, and I believe it should show up as a selectable audio source that can be paired with that video. This is a peculiarity probably of this particular capture card. But yeah, there it is now. So I can get the audio and the video from the same camera, and I can record that into its own file. So then you just follow down these settings. It's pretty straightforward. You could start with the ProRes setting you want. I'm just going to keep it really small. Just go with the proxy setting. But if you want higher recordings, all of these bit rates are available and published by Apple, so you'll see exactly what they are. I think they go from somewhere around 25 to 50 megabits per second, all the way up to like 300 megabits per second. So, you can see how quickly that would fill up your hard drive. So select whichever one, works for you, or whatever quality you want out of it at the end. And then I'm going to call this main camera ISO. And you might, have a date or title or the broadcast session that you were doing, episode, let's see, we're on episode 10, right? Yeah. So episode 10, Wirecast Live. And then we can choose the location. In this case, I'm just going to choose the desktop. And, that's actually, keep that in mind. If you select the desktop and you didn't actually, when you change the name, you didn't hit return or tab, sorry, not return, tab. ISO, Wirecast Live, episode 10. So here, it's still blue, right? So even when I just hit the browse button, I didn't actually take these changes. So you have to hit the tab key. That's just a peculiarity of the way we've implemented this. But we'll probably, I'll ask that to be fixed at some point. What happens, so now we can select the desktop. That's good. That's the title that I want for it. And then we go down here, configure this ISO for replay. At this point, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to record it in its own ISO file. And I want it to be a single file. I can also, if I want, segment it into seconds. And I think it would be nice if we could change that to minutes or hours too, so people can work with the unit of measurement that they want. For now, it's all in seconds. So you'll need to multiply by 60 so you can kind of get an idea of how many minutes, or divide by 60 so you know. In this case, we could just do, your segment could be every 30 seconds or something like that. Okay, but for this, I'm just choosing the single file. Hit OK. This also, we'll call this main camera. All right, now we've configured the ISO, and we're ready to go. We could start streaming or recording, our broadcast. So I'm going to start that up. I'm just going to do a record to disk MP4, and we'll save that on the desktop as well. I'm going to call it episode 10. And then we're going to choose the size or the type of encoder size that we want. 720p 30, that's all good. We'll use that. Hit OK. And now you can start recording. And right next to it, if you want, you can start the ISO at any time. Okay. Now, because this computer is currently doing so much, I'm already in 92% just by doing that record. We can lower that a little bit if we use hardware encoding. So why don't we go back output, go to the output settings, and from the encoding profile, if I go to the view details, I can save like my own record to disk. So if we say do the, and if I choose the Apple H.264, this is hardware encoding. So if it says X.264, it's software based. If it says on Mac, Apple, that's a hardware based encoding. That's quick sync on Apple. So we can choose the 720p30 default. And it's up to you if you want to change any of this. I think it's going to be okay. I'm just going to save as hardware encode 720 p30. Hit OK. Hit save. And now just select it from your list. Now we can use the hardware encoding. You, of course, could just, it's the same one as this default profile. But if you had other changes you wanted to make, and also it's nice because I can pop it right there at the top and I know what it is. So we're going to hit OK. We'll save that. Let's see how much that lowers our CPU. It should lower by 10% or so. All right, yeah, so 10% or so CPU, system CPU. That definitely saved us some work there. We can also add in, so now if we want to add the ISO, you would do that. I would not personally attempt an ISO on a computer that's struggling this much. So this demo machine is just a little Mac Mini. It's not the most powerful. I'm not even sure, it's not a quad core, I believe. So you would really, I highly recommend quad cores because if you, they really benefit from extra encoding work. Since this is just, I think, a dual core, it's going to struggle. So anyway, you could be recording and doing the ISO as well. And there the ISO goes. The thing with the ISO is you're not actually going to see how it affects, it's not currently tied to the output settings. So if you need to monitor it, you need to go into here and you can check it in here. So you can check the frame rate and the bit rate of how you're doing with your ISO. This output statistics menu is available just under the show statistics drop-down menu from the output, on the output drop-down. Select that and you're going to get this really nice graph of how you're doing. So you can see my two records here. The system CPU has done quite a bit, has dropped by about 10% or so. My RAM is currently quite high, my memory usage. So that might be a good place to get more RAM on this machine. We also have this, we can add ISO here too. So the bit rate and the frame rate, bit rate is hovering around 30 to 40. You also noticed here real quick that this little warning sign came on the ISO, which is probably telling you that your memory is too high or the system resource is overtaxed. So there it is, it's right there. So that's a warning sign that your computer is probably not up to the job and you might need more cores to do what you're doing. And that is ISO. If you want me to really quickly show you how it relates to replay, let's do that. So I can show you. So click on the main camera ISO. Now let's say we also wanted to use it in a replay setting or a replay situation. Now I've not done this in the real world. I've really just learned about this in theory. So we'll see how this goes. But if you select this this box, if you check the box here, and you configure this ISO for replay, at this point, the replay system takes over and really forces the ISO to become what it needs for Wirecast to use it as a replay. And that is going to, oh, real quick here. So maybe we can have a before and after. So we saw what the ISO looked like on the, let me go here for a second. I'm going to quit. We can quit GarageBand. That's probably taking up some resources here. The don't save. We'll also maybe delete this shot here. We've got a lot going on in this little guy. Okay, so that probably freed up some system resources. Now let's go into, I believe, I'm going to minimize this. And I'm going to close, cancel. And close that. All right, so these are the files that we just recorded. So we have the ISO, which is right here, the 2 ISOs. And you should see they're ProRes files, and they were just recording that ISO file, even though I never brought the shot into the live window. So I didn't have, I think when I had hit ISO, it instantly started recording the main camera in the background, regardless of what was in any of these windows here. Up till now, you could only ever record what was in the right window, the live window. You couldn't record any of your other sources. But I just picked camera, the main camera, and it started recording it into a file in the background. And this is what you get, regardless of what you were doing in Wirecast. And then here's the other encode as well. With so pretty cool little system. You're going to have a backup copy of those files. You obviously just need the system resources to be able to do that. And you need Wirecast Pro. Next, so that's kind of what it looks like when you're doing the ISO. Let's talk about what it looks like when you convert an ISO to a replay ISO. So we're going to go back here, and we're going to select this ISO and make it available for replay. All right, and we can choose hotkeys to create this. So I can, if I had a hotkey already, you know, we can create a new replay hotkey just for this source, and we can do a new marking just for this. So if I click the Manage button, I might want to call this, create a new hotkey source. I'm going to call this main camera replay. And then I'm going to call it, let's do, so it should be R for replay, I believe. So we probably want to do, say, an option R. Now, if I don't plan on making a normal replay, if I never plan on using a program replay, or if I just want this to be my main replay, I believe you can just update the replay hotkey. So we could actually, I think, well, it may not let us assign this, because if we try to type a keyboard shortcut, it might tell us that R is taken. So let's just do Option R. So we have main camera, and we can make that global. All right, and we're going to click here, main camera, and do Option R. There we go, and hit close that. So now we can go, you can create the replay is the main camera replay, and then we can even update that to be the global one if we want, but I'm not going to do that for now. And we can even do a new marking one if we want to do like a reset. So we're going to hit OK, and let's do this. We're going to start the replay ISO. So we'll just create a start button. And now if we hit the Option R, should create a replay, which we just did, right? Now, the replay settings are still, I'm going to turn that off for a second, are still in the global replay settings. So you still need to go to the replay settings to make sure those are what you want. So we may want to limit the default replay to 10 seconds or 5 seconds. And we may want to limit the replay to 1 minute or so. So those settings should still apply. We want to create them, say, on layer 3 or layer 1. Is actually, I prefer layer 1 for my replays when doing that. Ask when deleting shot, yes. Replay shot template. At this time, I don't want to create a template. After creating it, show it in the preview, activate replay manually. All that's good. So these settings are going to kind of apply to this ISO replay we've now configured. All right, so that should do it. Hit OK. And let's say we've got camera, this Let's take this live. Hold on. There we go. This is my replay shot. That's where it was created. Let's delete this one. I don't want it. Delete it. Let's go in here, and I'm going to maybe make these just a teeny bit smaller. All right. Okay, so I've got this camera, my Wirecast cam camera. I've got my Logitech webcam, and we have our main camera right here. So those are the 3 sources. This is the ISO that is also the replay. So we can have our Logitech camera in this right here, and you can have something going on the screen, and we can still have a replay on camera, the main camera. So even though it's not on the screen. So let's start the ISO/replay. And we can now, I can do something and show you, what it looked like if I went that way. And if we hit the Option R key, it's going to automatically pop that into a replay shot up on the layer that we told it to. Now we can just dial this in and just watch what's going on here. If I play that, oh, sorry. I actually took it live. Let's take it out of the live window. Let's take it back in. And if I want to preview it, so that's the moment I want to capture. I just drag my in point to there, right about the time I'm about to do that. We can do the replay speed. We can slow us down to 25%. Meanwhile, the main camera, we could still be switching back and forth with all that stuff. It may actually be good to have a separate window just for the replay shot to configure all that outside the preview, so you can still be switching and between cameras, and then you can prep the replay shot in a separate window by itself before you take it live. Now that everything's happening in the main camera window, that is it makes it hard to switch, right? So I think there's an argument to be made that replay system, probably now that everything's in this preview window, can get pulled out into its own system. Now that we've added ISO, it really makes sense to be able to do that. So I'll probably put in a feature request. But if you have other replay suggestions or around ISO, we'd really love to hear those as well. Anyway, so you can configure all that when you're all ready. We've got the in and out point, and we can take that live. And when it's done playing, it's going to be done, and it's going to go back to my camera on the side. So it looks like I needed to check my out point too. Don't forget, you want to set in and out. And now we're back to that camera. So that's the really cool thing about this replay system. You can now grab other angles without affecting what was in the live. Okay? And then in addition to that, you can still turn on this, you can still turn on the, the global program replay. So you can get the best of both worlds. You can have 1 or 2 isolated cameras and get those on their own replay or ISO settings, and then you can also still be capturing the main window and get anything that's going on there. So you're covering all your bases, which is pretty cool. And then each one of those can be loaded up into their own replay. You can see how complex this can get and how powerful your computer would need to be doing all this at the same time. So just keep in mind that the power that we put into Wirecast 7 is in your hands, and it's up to you whether you're going to crash your system or not, or completely freeze everything. I hope that answers most of your questions. Helgi, thanks for the I did get a haircut. Thanks for noticing. All right, I think that covers it. Do you guys still have any questions you want me to cover before we leave? I mean, we've been here, hour and 20 minutes. So you who hung in through this entire broadcast, I'm proud of you. Give yourselves a pat on the back. We covered a lot of stuff. We really did. So I hope this has all been useful. I'm a bit verbose. I tend to over-explain things. I think that's the teacher in me. I just really, 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 really like to make sure that people understand what I'm saying. And I'm sure you caught it a long time ago. All right. I don't see any more comments or questions, so I'm going to call this a day. We will see you next week, next Thursday, for episode 11. We are interviewing New Blue, Travis White from New Blue, and we're going to be talking all about Tidler Live Express and the features that are in it, as well as the ones in Tidler Live Standard. and Advanced and Ultimate. So they have a lot to show you, and it's all really cool stuff. And so I think you should definitely tune in for that. We'll be doing an interview show, and we hope to see you there. Leave a comment, question, tweet at us, WirecastLive, hashtag WirecastLive, or at Wirecast, and keep streaming. See you later.